Good afternoon. I am Sheriff Kim Stewart of Doña County, New Mexico. We are very delighted today to bring you some positive news. This is certainly rare for us. It's rare in the United States still, even given the advancement in technology. So right now, I want to draw your attention back to March 10th, 1985. And that is when human remains were found in the northern part of our county. And I'm going to hand this very quickly off to the detective who was given this cold case. It is a cold case, 37 years old. She was handed this case in March of 2021 and asked to try to develop leads or anything actionable out of this. And here we are today. So you can see that none of this goes down quickly. It certainly doesn't take place overnight, but this is a development that we here at DASO are just very, very pleased to be able to tell you about today in more detail. Also, by way of explanation, we're going to have some partners in this join us on this Zoom, via Zoom, to this particular press release, because they are certainly a major part of this effort for us as well. So without further, I want to introduce you to Detective Melissa Agullo. She has been with us 7 years, and she has been in detectives about a little over 2 years, I believe. So I'll introduce her and she can take it from here. She's going to give you some good facts.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. As the sheriff mentioned, my name is Melissa Agullo. I'm a detective with the Doña County Sheriff's Office assigned to our Criminal Investigations Division. I'd like to go over a written statement I prepared for you all today in regards to this case. On March 10th, 1985, the Doña County Sheriff's Office received a call from local hunters regarding possible human remains. The remains were found near Mountain Bell Telephone Relay Building off County Road E073, approximately 1.2 miles north of Umpam exit off Interstate 25. The remains were believed to be of a white female, estimated to have been between 16 and 19 years old at the time of her death. She was approximately 5'2" tall, with blonde to light brown hair. The unknown female was found wearing a 3/4 sleeve sports jersey with Wilson imprinted across. In the initial stages of the investigation, it was determined that the female likely died 3 to 6 months prior to being located, thus making her estimated date of death between September 10th, 1984 to January 10th, 1985. Over the course of the next 37 years, the identity of the female remained unknown. Investigators continued to follow leads, including looking at numerous missing person cases. However, all the leads were determined to be dead ends. On March 10th, 2021, the case of Jane Doe was assigned to me with the hope that new technology and investigative tools could lead to the answers that had long eluded this case. While reviewing 3 decades worth of case files, I was contacted by Ainsley Cotter with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She was able to offer DNA resources for unidentified cases. In collaboration with the Doña County Sheriff's Office and the New Mexico Office of Medical Investigator, the left femur bone of Jane Doe was submitted to Astrea Forensics. DNA was extracted from approximately 155 milligrams of bone powder. So picture a sample size smaller than a 200 milligram tablet of ibuprofen to test. Astrea used groundbreaking technology that can use the best data from the worst samples for use in genetic genealogy. The process was successful, and the DNA results then were submitted to Innovative Forensics Investigations to build out a genealogical family tree. The collaborative work led to answers, and after more than 3 decades, we're proud to announce Jane Doe has officially been identified as 16-year-old Dorothy Harrison. Researching into Dorothy Harrison's disappearance goes as follows, and this is kind of what we know as a timeline. Dorothy was approximately 5'1" in height and weighed 95 pounds. She had light brown hair, green eyes, and a medium complexion. Her nostrils were not even and were considered lopsided. She had a small scar on the bow of her mouth and often wore heavy eye makeup. Dorothy Harrison, 16, leaves her home in Wichita, Kansas on Thursday, July 25th, 1984, around 5 p.m. Dorothy's family reported her missing at that time. When she was last seen, she was getting into a vehicle that was described as a big, tan, long car. Dorothy was picked up by two unknown females, described as a white female and a black female, both older. Sometime in the beginning of August 1984, Dorothy calls her family and says she's in Los Angeles, California. At that time, we know the 1984 Summer Olympic Games, number 23, were taking place in LA, beginning July 6th through August 12th of 1984. Weeks later, approximately late August, early September 1984, Dorothy calls home again saying she's in El Paso, Texas, and is on her way back home to Wichita, Kansas. No one hears from Dorothy after this last phone call. Dorothy was likely killed between September 10th, 1984 to January 10th, 1985. Dorothy's remains are located in Doña County, New Mexico, approximately 50 miles north of El Paso, Texas, on March 10th, 1985. Dorothy's case has been classified as a homicide, and the cause of death has yet to be determined. The Doña County Sheriff's Office continues to seek information from the public regarding this case. If you have information about Dorothy Harrison, or you believe you encountered her between July 25th, 1984, and at the time of her homicide, please contact the Doña County Sheriff's Office. On behalf of the Doña County Sheriff's Office, we send a special thank you to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Astrea Forensics, and Innovative Forensic Investigations who helped make today's announcement possible. For that, I'd like to proudly introduce Ainsley Cotter with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Thank you so much, Detective. My name is Ainsley Cotter, and I'm with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The National Center is a nonprofit organization that provides law enforcement, families, and communities support for missing, unidentified, and exploited children cases. The forensic service team at NCMEC works extremely hard every day to help facilitate resources that may be the key to giving a child their name back. The reality is that cases like Dorothy's happen way too often. At NCMEC, we are currently working to find answers in over 650 unidentified deceased child cases throughout the United States. NCMEC sees how powerful collaboration can be. Advancements in DNA and genealogy are evolving the search for answers and finally giving names back to unidentified child victims. We applaud the Doña County Sheriff's Office and everyone who is involved in this case for their hard work. We also send out our heartfelt condolences to Dorothy's family as they process this difficult information. The reason we are here today is because no one ever gave up. The work that continued for over 3 decades never wavered and is the reason why we are here today. We urge anyone who knows anything about Dorothy's case to come forward with any information they might have. Thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ed Green with Astrea Forensics.
Thank you, Ainsley, and thank you, Detective Agullo. I would like to echo the sentiments, the admiration for the Sheriff's Department for not giving up on this case, and just briefly describe our role and what Astrea Forensics does generally. We are a small company, commercial operation that operates to generate information from difficult DNA samples using technology that we've developed that is new and can allow for forensic investigation from samples that did not previously have a chance for this. Specifically, we specialize in extracting DNA from bones and rootless hair. we can routinely now extract and sequence enough DNA from single rootless hairs or small amounts of bone to generate a genotype file, to generate enough DNA sequence information to allow a genealogical investigation that we will hear about here. This in forensic investigations often can be enough to help identify a suspect, and in the case of missing persons, to help identify them. We're incredibly proud of the work that we do with NECMEC and various law enforcement agencies, and again, just echo what Ainsley has said here. Our condolences to the family, and a very proud moment for the Sheriff's Department for not giving up on this case. We'd like to think that that is our motto as well. Every sample, every case is incredibly important and often difficult for reasons that we may not anticipate, and we as well like to not give up ever, and take what we have and through that make an identification. With that, I will hand it over to Tom McAndrew with Innovative Forensic Investigations, and thank you.
My name is Tom McAndrew with Innovative Forensic Investigations. We are a private company based in Emporia, Virginia. Our company routinely assists law enforcement and organizations such as NCMEC with doing forensic genealogy to help identify unidentified victims and forensic samples from crime scenes. I echo the sentiments of passing along condolences to the victim's family. Our CEO and founder of our company, Jennifer Moore, is one of the most passionate forensic genealogists in this country, and she does it simply for the right reasons. And that reason is to give back these victims their voice, their name, and to pursue justice. And I would like to commend the sheriff in this particular county. I was a homicide detective for over 25 years, and I know within law enforcement, often investigators don't get the support from the executives in law enforcement to pursue these types of investigations. And I'd like to commend them and their agency and the detectives' efforts in pursuing this case. Thank you. I'll pass it back to the sheriff at this time.
Thank you all for assisting with this today. I hope that it gives you enough information, realizing that these are people with special expertise, so we couldn't answer all your questions. We will try at the close of this to be helpful or more forthcoming as needed. Dorothy's family, as you might imagine, this hit them quite significantly, even though it's been all of these years later. They certainly never had an inkling what had happened to their daughter and sister. Dorothy's family is now comprised of her mother is still living, as well as 5 siblings. And they do not want to be identified beyond this. They live in small towns in the Kansas area, and they wanted some time to really take this into consideration. They're also working to get Dorothy's remains back to Kansas for a burial. They asked me to read this statement to you. This is from her family. Dorothy was a typical teenager. She was only 16 years old when this horrific crime happened to her. Like most teens, she was sometimes unhappy at home and easily influenced. She left home with some people she thought were her friends, and we never saw her again. The news of her death is devastating, and even though this crime happened over 30 years ago to our family, it's new and incredibly difficult information to process. We have so many unanswered questions and are hopeful that the continued investigation will be able to provide some of those answers. We ask that you give us the time to grieve and request any questions or information about Dorothy's murder be sent to Doña County Sheriff Kim Stewart. So that closes our part of this presentation. You may have questions. We'll try to help you with the answers, or our panel can. Anybody?
So what will happen with the case now that she has been identified?
Well, we're going to follow leads. I want to bring up something that seems insignificant, but it shows you what technology can do. This was a huge event through DNA and familial ancestry searching, no doubt. Yesterday, because of GIS mapping, we now have a better location of where Dorothy was found. So it just goes to show you that in these number of years, all sorts of technology has actually improved and given us access. So as of yesterday, we were looking at the location more accurately than ever before. 37 years ago, all we had is detectives or deputies responding, say, well, it seems like this many miles north of Upham Road or this many miles east of I-25. Now we have a very, very specific location. So when you ask what will happen, we're going to follow these leads. This is hopefully going to her hometown or to the Wichita, Kansas area today. We hope that this will, along with her photo, along with pictures of her clothing, ring a bell with someone who is still alive, or someone who remembers her, or someone who remembers her last days. I think we've seen enough of this across the country now since 2018 that things do get uncovered and cases do get solved. So just overnight, we found out a little bit more information than we had before. So we're very hopeful this is going to provide new leads, and wherever those leads take us, we will go. We will follow up. Justin.
Can someone talk a little bit more about the DNA extraction process and just kind of explain how that works?
Yeah.
Sure, I can take that. In this case, and generally, there are methods for recovering DNA from bone remains and, as I said, rootless hair that are largely adapted from the technology that's been developed for ancient DNA, for getting DNA from bones that may be 10,000s of years old. And what we do at Astrea Forensics, I am also a professor at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and run an ancient DNA facility there. My colleagues, including Kelly Parkins, Dr. Kelly Parkins, have a background in ancient DNA as well. In that field, the technology has developed to extremely efficiently recover DNA from very small samples. And we have learned enormous amounts about what the DNA is like in bone samples. It's typically very fragmented, present in very minute quantities, but there's technology for recovering it, which involves just dissolving the bone powder and putting the DNA in an aqueous solution and then having it bound to silica beads. Then you can wash away all the other things. Then one has a very small amount of very fragmented DNA, very tiny pieces, but billions and billions of these very tiny pieces can be recovered even from a few milligrams of bone powder. That, then we have some technology for converting it into a form that can be sequenced on a DNA sequencer, which means chemically modifying it so it can be loaded on the sequencer. There's fantastic new technology now developed over the last decade for sequencing little segments of DNA. We take advantage of that. Then, once we have these billions and billions of short little DNA reads, A's, C's, G's, and T's, there's a computational problem. We have to then figure out from all of these reads what her genotype was, or what the sample's genotype was. That is, what were the alleles from mom and dad at each of the variable positions in the genome. And we have fantastic computational methods for doing that. The end of this process is a file like one would get from 23andMe or Ancestry or one of the direct-to-consumer companies, where you would spit in a tube and they take DNA out of your saliva. But the input is very different. It's a very, very tiny amount of, in this case, a decades-old bone converges on this genotype file, which we then pass along to the experts at the innovative forensic investigations, and Tom and his team do their magic.
And one of the our desires today too was to share this not only with our community and with Dorothy's family, but also to share it statewide, that this is available. This DNA processing and familial ancestry searching is available. You have to seek it out. I've mentioned our own interest with rapid DNA. We are very committed to utilizing technology of today in 2022 to solve crimes. So that was the other reason we really wanted to put this out today, to tell our colleagues in New Mexico, please, especially the smaller jurisdiction that don't have a lot of funds and don't have a lot of resources to be able to access these great sources. Anybody else?
So is this the first time you guys use this forensic technology to identify a missing or unidentified person?
I believe so, yes. It's the first. I believe we've had other cold cases where through other means people were later identified. It certainly wasn't over 3 decades later.
And does this mean you guys have other cases that you might consider using the same technology to identify these missing or unidentified as well?
Absolutely, as we speak. Justin.
Just to kind of nail down the timeline here, so do you believe she left Wichita to go to the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics?
We don't know exactly that. We just know that the family was reporting back. She was in Los Angeles, and it was timely with the games of the Olympics at that time. We really do not know.
Did they tell you anything about why she might have come to this part of the world?
No. In fact, the information that Detective Agullo had received was that she had left home for a few days at a time before, but never where she left the state. So this seemed unusual, although they didn't really know. They were surprised that she ends up in New Mexico and then by way of California. So it wasn't totally out of the ordinary for her to go off a day or two with friends or someone. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you all for coming, and it's just great that when we request you appear that you do. It helps everyone. Thank you again.